Hello, everybody, and welcome to the No BS Zone. For those of you who don't know, I'm Bernie Goldberg, and I'm here with my friend, the Renaissance man of the Rockies, John Daly. How are you, John?
I'm doing good, Bernie. How about you?
I'm doing okay, but I'm concerned about the war, as everybody is, in Iran. Let me begin by stating what I hope and think is the obvious. Nobody knows how this is going to end. When it comes to war, the best laid plans of presidents and generals often go off the rails. So nobody knows how this is going to end. But Democrats think they do. They already said this is a big mistake, and they've even called this a disaster. Senator Chris Murphy, a progressive Democrat from Connecticut, who I believe has presidential aspirations because he's always on television, he has said, and this is a verbatim quote, "It's almost certain that Trump's war against Iran will turn into a disaster." Okay, he may be right, but you'll forgive me if I get the impression that if Donald Trump is rooting for success, Democrats are rooting against Donald Trump. I don't mean that they're rooting for American troops to be hurt or killed or anything like that. I am emphatically not suggesting that. But I want to quote Barton Swain in the Wall Street Journal, who I think sums up what I'm thinking. Barton Swain said, "A savvier opposition than today's Democrats would have practiced some circumspection in the early days of epic fury. Now they'll benefit only if America fails." I think he's onto something, John.
Yeah, it's interesting. So we're only about a week and a half into this, so it's kind of wild to me that people are already declaring it, a failure or an imminent failure. We've clearly caused the Iranian regime a lot of damage. We've taken out a lot of their leadership and a lot of their military assets as well, including the Navy and Air Force. Both our military and Israel's military seems to be achieving their goals. We've had this obviously that unfortunate incident with the Iranian school we could talk about separately, which was awful. But it strikes me as odd for people to already be calling this a failure, and it doesn't surprise me just because foreign policy and war efforts are always eventually become a political hot potato these days. We saw how many Democrats were in favor of going to Iraq, and then as it became less popular and it became harder and more difficult, they sort of acted like they were betrayed, by what George Bush was doing, even though they had seen the same, intelligence and everything. So, yeah, it doesn't surprise me that it's sad. It's sad that the Democrats are already thinking this way, and there are some on the right that are thinking this way too. There's been a strain of the MAGA right and even some non-MAGA right who have been using this terminology like forever war in recent years. They don't want to be involved. They want to be sort of isolationists or don't want to get involved in these types of things. So it's never, I don't think it's really ever a politically popular thing to go to war. Sometimes it is in the very early stages, like which we saw after 9/11, but eventually it becomes sort of more of a political liability than anything.
One of the Democrats' complaints is that there was no imminent threat. And they may be right. They may be absolutely right. But I want to present what I will readily acknowledge is an imperfect analogy. What if the Allied troops could have eliminated Hitler before all the damage he caused, before the 70 million deaths, before the Holocaust? Would that have been some kind of unethical breach? Would that have been a terrible thing? Now, I'm not suggesting, I want to emphasize, I'm not suggesting that the Ayatollahs in Iran are Hitler. I'm not suggesting that. But why was it an imminent threat? Did we have to wait? Not an imminent threat. Did we have to wait until the Ayatollah had his finger on a launch button? Would that have been time enough for an imminent threat? I'm believing that when Trump decided to go to war, Democrats said that was a mistake. And if he didn't go to war, if he did nothing, and the Ayatollahs produced a nuclear bomb that was at least a threat to the rest of the world, and if not more than a threat. They would have blamed Donald Trump for that too. He would have been blamed. He's being blamed for going to war, and he would have been blamed almost certainly if he didn't stop Iran from producing a nuclear weapon.
Yeah,
I'm writing a column about this, and I'm concluding he couldn't win in this situation.
Yeah, that's been a tough part of this from the beginning, because even if you believe that the right thing is happening right now and that Trump is working on regime change, even though they don't always want to say regime change, and this is a war, although they don't always want to say war, but the public the public messaging has not been very good on this. You know, I don't remember if Rubio was one of the people early on talking about this imminent threat. I think he was, but some of the people in the administration were talking about, you know, this was they're rebuilding their nuclear, you know, facilities, their weapons. That wasn't the case. I mean, we had a lot of success last summer when we bombed Iran's nuclear programs. They've been under rubble ever since. You know, we've had satellite imagery. The rest of the world has seen this. So that part of it was not an imminent threat. You know, so, and they kind of adjusted that over time to say that, well, you know, if we were to attack, we know they would then attack, so we have to attack them first. That, you know,
John, let me jump in for just a second.
Yeah.
To make clear that I personally don't believe there was an imminent threat either.
Oh, right.
I just want to be clear about that.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I should have reiterated that. But yeah, it's so you bring up a good point. You know, I think I've heard better arguments, just based on there are lots of good arguments to make for what we did in Iran. The administration has not been good at making them so far. So Rubio's been doing pretty good. Surprisingly, one of the best, I think, advocates for what's happening in Iran right now is John Bolton, who the administration hates. He's out there. They're actually, you know, coming after him right now legally, but he's out there. He's been making a stronger case for why we should have done this than I think anybody in the administration. So that's kind of odd to me.
One more point before we move on. It's a terrible tragedy when there's a loss of any Americans in uniform. And it's a legitimate news story to cover military deaths when they happen. And the media doesn't hesitate to report the deaths of 7 people every chance they get. I'm not criticizing reporting it, but they seem anxious to make sure everybody knows about that. So I was wondering, even though it's a terrible tragedy, it's a good thing CNN wasn't around on June 6, 1944, D-Day. You know what happened that day, John? 2,500 Americans were killed and 4,400 Allied troops were killed on D-Day. One day, on one day, 2,500 Americans were killed in one day. Today's Democrats, if they were around then, would have called for the impeachment of Franklin Roosevelt. They would have stripped General Eisenhower of his military command. Could you imagine what would have happened if today's media and today's Democrats were around then? Because then, while journalists should never be cheerleaders, and there could be a loyal opposition, then we had some feeling that we were all in this together. I don't have that feeling today.
Oh no, and I do think there's a broader point there. You mentioned with how the media treats this. I don't think they would be as fixated on these number of deaths if it were a Democratic president who was doing this.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point.
Yeah, and we remember how things went under Bush. I mean, that fixation. There was a lot more death as time went on, obviously. But yeah, it's this. There was this. I mean, we had people on cable news counting down, you know, the number of deaths and how many days we've been at war, and I don't see that same vigor when it comes to any sort of military operation. On you know, people died under Barack Obama, our soldiers. People died under Joe Biden, our soldiers. And many on the right, you know, were very loud about it, but you know, the mainstream media, the left-leaning media, not so much.
Okay, let's move on to the implications of the war and anything else on the midterm elections. Again, forgive me for stating the obvious, but I think sometimes you have to state the obvious. Anything can happen between now and November, but it's not looking good for Republicans. This war can end well for Donald Trump, and it may not be a factor at all in the midterms, but affordability will be a factor. And if prices don't come down, it's not going to be just a Democratic takeover of the House. The blue wave can be a blue tsunami, and it could extend all the way to the Senate. What do you think, John?
Yeah, I largely agree with that. The Democrats are going to win the House for sure, just the way the numbers are set up. I think there's a decent chance they'll win the Senate. That's a little less certain, of course. With Iran, I'm not convinced this will make much of a difference in the midterms. In the last No BS Zone, I talked about how tuned out Americans are when it comes to foreign policy. It doesn't seem to be making much of what we've done so far, although the Democrats are making a lot of political hay out of it. You know, the Trump's approval ratings are staying basically the same. There's not much difference. And so, you know, unless we start seeing like a large number of U.S. casualties, God forbid, or something of that nature, I don't think there's going to be much of an impact. And honestly, Trump's already, it'll be interesting to see where he goes now. There's a lot of conflicting reports. Some people say that within the administration say he's very committed. He's going to stay in this as long as it takes. But he's out there in the public sort of already kind of weighing the idea of stopping right now, you know, and enjoying the gains that they got and kind of keeping a close eye on things. So I don't know where it'll go. So it's sort of hard to factor Iran, you know, into this. But yeah, the prices remain high, you know, again, large degree because of the tariffs. The Supreme Court knocked some of those down, but Trump's trying to find creative ways to keep them in place. So the jobs situation has been increasingly worse. February was a really bad, that report. So I think it's a very uphill battle for the Republicans.
John, before we move on, you wanted to talk about, and I should have brought this up earlier, about the Ukraine connection in Iran. What is that?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of reports about how Russia has been helping Iran. According to leaked intelligence, Russia is basically helping what's left of the Iranian regime target U.S. soldiers and American warships. Ukraine is actually stepping up to help with that. They're deploying counter-drone resources, including personnel, to protect U.S. troops, and they are in this position to do this because Ukraine has had to get very creative and resourceful over the last 4 years, especially with some unreliable allies like the United States. But they become masters at affordable, quick drone warfare. It's become a huge part of what they've been doing on their end. Some may remember that Operation Spiderweb from a while back, but they've only increased their drones. So they're helping us out, and it's interesting too. Just on the broader topic of Ukraine, they are really kicking ass right now. You know, we've over the last 14 months, we've seen the United States under Trump repeatedly throw them under the bus. You know, try to basically surrender portions of Ukraine to Putin that Putin hasn't taken. But Ukraine is taking back territory at a rate we've never seen before. Russian military deaths are at an all-time high. The situation could obviously change back in the other direction, but I think Putin's in many ways off step now because of Iran too. But Ukraine appears to be winning this thing, and it's a real testament to the Ukraine people. I don't think anyone, at least outside of that country, believed they would fend off Russia the way they have. It's been very difficult. It's come at a huge cost, but this idea that Putin holds all the cards that we heard from Trump right back at the beginning of his second term, I think that clearly isn't the case anymore.
Well, just one word about Ukraine, and then I want to move on to something else. You say they're winning. They may be winning. I can't envision how they can ultimately win. That's not to say Russia's going to win, but right. I can't see Russia losing. I can't see Russia getting out of Ukraine. Every day, as I've said a million times before, another piece of Ukraine turns to rubble. It's horrible. I just don't see how Ukraine wins the war, even if they're winning.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to depend on how you define winning, but I mean, I think right now Putin is being forced further back. I think there will be some sort of deal at some point. There'll probably be some territory that will be given to Russia after this that they didn't have before the war started. But I think it's going to be Putin's going to have far less leverage when this happens. I think he's going to have to make some concessions. He'll play it off as a win, of course. But I think the weaker Russia becomes on this, the less they'll be able to get out of this. And I mean, I would love to see Russia pushed all the way out. I don't think that's a realistic ending to this, but I think we're closer to that than we were a few months ago.
So let's move seamlessly from Putin, Zelensky to Kristi Noem. It's a perfect, beautiful segue I just did there. Kristi Noem was fired last week. We all know that.
Yes.
I think for good reason. I think it was finally her testimony to Congress that Donald Trump signed off on the $200 million vanity video that she made. I think she should have been fired for calling the people who were killed by ICE agents domestic terrorists. I think that was a shame what she did about Minneapolis, but she's gone. I have to assume, John, you're not losing any sleep over her being fired.
No, it's funny because at the very so many of these people in Trump's cabinet, obviously they have these positions just because they were loyal to Trump. They kissed up to Trump, not necessarily qualified for the job. Many of them clearly aren't. Noem was actually someone I didn't feel as bad about at the beginning of this as other people, but yeah, she turned out to be a real dud. And it's funny that you mentioned this because I think it's important to look at what she didn't get fired over earlier, and you brought up one of the big ones right there, calling a couple of Americans that were killed by ICE agents domestic terrorists. She smeared them. She sent asylum seekers to third world prisons without due process. She was carrying on an alleged Bernie extramarital affair with Corey Lewandowski on the government dime, much of it, and with this luxury $70 million jet she was flying in. She was awarding, through these irregular processes, federal contracts to companies that she and Corey had close business ties to. And you mentioned that too. She spent $220 million. This is taxpayers' money on these self-aggrandizing campaign ads with her on a horse. And just for some perspective, for people when they hear that number, it's sort of easy to lose track of this. They spent more money on that ad campaign than was spent on James Cameron's movie Titanic. Granted, that's sort of an old movie. We've had times have changed a little bit, but I think it's really worth noting. And but none of that is what got her fired. It was that Senate hearing where she came out and she acknowledged that Trump okayed this, and I think he probably did. He's saying he didn't. I'm like, I think he probably did. That's otherwise I don't think
do whatever you have to do is what he probably said.
Yeah, that's what I mean by that.
All right, this last topic may seem unimportant to some of you, but it's important to me. And I just want to get this out there just one time. The other day, Carolyn Levitt was talking about former President Barack Obama, and she referred to him as Barack Hussein Obama, which is how her boss, Donald Trump, refers to Barack Obama. Now, he doesn't refer to Joe Biden as Joe Robinette Biden or Bill Jefferson Clinton, only Barack Hussein Obama. We all know why he does this. I'm not going to waste anybody's time explaining why he does this. But there's a faction, not the entirety, not maybe a majority, but a faction of his MAGA base that is composed of bigots. It's the only way I can say it. They're composed of bigots. And they don't like people named Hussein. They don't like Muslims. They don't like Arabs. They don't like any people like that. And that's why he does it. And it's really tiresome. It's really something a president of the United States should not do. But our president, this president, does all sorts of things that I believe a president should not do. You can weigh in on this if you like, John. If not, that's okay too.
Sure, sure. Yeah, no, I never thought. I mean, this has been going on with sectors of the right for quite a while. The Barack Hussein Obama stuff. I didn't think it was especially funny back in 2008. When it started, when someone on the right would repeat Obama's full name over and over again. Now it seems even more stupid to me. I don't think sitting presidents, even if you take out what the reference is there, I don't think sitting presidents should be fixated on their predecessors. Obama was to some extent with Bush. We saw it with Trump to Obama in the first term. But it's, to me, it's so clownish. It's similar to hanging that auto pen drawing on the White House above Joe Biden's name.
It's just childish.
It is. It is. I mean, would it be too much to ask for adults to be in positions of federal leadership? It is. It's part of me. It's too, and to still be taking these shots at Obama and Biden. Someone brought this up the other day, and I don't remember if I saw it on Twitter, but it really sort of got me thinking. So when you think about this, Obama and Biden are two guys that Trump never beat. He would have loved to have, obviously couldn't work with Obama, wasn't able to beat Biden because he pulled out of the race and Harris came in. But Trump did beat Hillary. He did beat Kamala Harris. And I've seen a few people argue that it probably really tears Trump up inside that these candidates he did defeat were both women. He never beat a man in a general election. And we know how he sort of feels about those topics. So I wonder if that haunts him in a way. And that's why one of the reasons he still does this sort of thing to his predecessors.
All right, the end. Daly tells me that we're running something resembling a March Madness sale. You could talk about that for 30 seconds, John, but if we are, may I ask if you can handle the financial part? Get a gift subscription, a March Madness gift subscription for your friends. Running a good sale at the time. Get it for people who you think will like what we're saying, or get it from people who are going to get really annoyed at what I'm saying. Daly's a more reasonable person.
It's a great deal. So it's half off right now on an annual subscription. We did this a while back, I think last year sometime, and people took advantage of it. We said, hey, let's try it again in March, having a March Madness sale. But yeah, 50% off. That's $25 for the year. That's an amazing, if that's the lowest we've ever gone for a membership. So we hope you all join us. That gives you exclusive content that the free subscribers do not get. So you'll definitely want to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I know money is tight, and if it is, don't do what we're suggesting. But if you can, and if you have a friend or not an enemy, but somebody you don't like, get a gift subscription. All right. Hope everything goes well this week for all of you and for you, John. Until next time, I'm Bernie Goldberg.